Life sometimes teaches you the biggest lessons in the most unexpected moments. Who would have thought that one day I would be here, openly talking about the pain of betrayal that lurked in the shadow of a seemingly happy marriage? The marriage I thought I had kept safe for years had been silently decaying from within. My suspicions began some time ago, but it took a while for me to uncover the truth. It was finally time to take action, but this wouldn't be just an ordinary confrontation. I found myself at the heart of a meticulously planned revenge. But how did it all happen? Let's go back to the day it all began. In the beginning, I believed that my marriage with Sarah was built on solid foundations. 10 whole years. No kids, just the two of us, building our life together. Sarah was always more prone to emotional outbursts. Her mood swings sometimes drained me, but I brushed it off as stress or something else. Then the strange behavior started. Sarah was constantly glued to her phone, and it wasn't just casual texting with friends. Secretive smiles, odd laughs, and the sparkle in her eyes that I used to see when she looked at me were now gone. Yes, I had noticed. The real blow came when she made up an out-of-town work trip. To me, it was all too obvious, but she thought she was fooling me. Rather than forcing her to confront me immediately, I chose to stay calm and patient. I stuck to my plan, acting as if nothing was wrong while observing everything meticulously. I'm not a tech expert, but I've watched enough spy movies to know how to use a few small devices. After approving my own business trip, I secretly installed cameras all over the house. The living room, bedroom, kitchen. I even got voice recorders because I wanted to know every detail. I wanted not just the physical betrayal, but every word spoken. Within 2 days, luck was on my side. Sarah's phone kept buzzing with messages. Whenever she thought I wasn't looking, she'd leave the room to reply. It was then that I realized my biggest advantage. We shared the same phone plan, and the account was under my name. This gave me access to all message and call logs. What did I find? A late-night call to an unknown number? And a man named James. What would you do next? Of course, I did what any normal person would do. I hacked her emails. What I found there was a treasure trove. Romantic emails between Sarah and this James, their planned weekend getaway, every detail. It was all so cliché, candlelit dinners, hotel rooms. But the most hurtful part was how she spoke about me in those emails. It was as if I didn't exist. To her, our 10-year marriage was nothing. She described me as boring and routine. As I planned my own trip, I was also making special preparations for Sarah's weekend fling. Specifically, I coated the lingerie she planned to wear that night with hot pepper extract. When the day came, I made a big show of packing my suitcase, said goodbye to her, and left the house. I had my laptop and phone ready to tune in to the live feed from the cameras I had placed all over the house. I wasn't going to miss a thing. As soon as I hit the road, a notification popped up on my phone. James was on his way to our home. At first, Sarah acted like everything was normal, tidying the house, lighting candles, setting the table. And then James walked in. Such a cliché. Tall, dark-haired, probably thinking he was every woman's dream. He walked into my home, kissed my wife, and behaved as if the life I had built for years meant nothing. They ate dinner, drank cheap wine, laughed as if nothing was wrong. After dinner, they moved to the living room, getting cozy, but I was waiting for the moment when they'd head to the bedroom. My patience was wearing thin. When they finally entered the bedroom, things took a turn quickly. As Sarah excitedly tried to put on her lingerie, the look of confusion on her face was immediate. What started as mild discomfort quickly spread into a burning sensation all over her skin. Her face contorted. She started scratching, bewildered, trying to figure out what was happening. James had no clue. Sarah, too proud to admit what was going on, tried to push through, but the itching became unbearable. Sarah bolted out of bed and rushed to the bathroom. James stood frozen in the corner, completely clueless and dumbfounded. A while later, Sarah returned, her skin covered in red patches. Frustrated and itching like mad, Sarah started yelling at James. He was getting his share of the blame. She accused him of ruining the night. The argument escalated, and I just sat back and watched. This was a small repayment for the months of betrayal and pain I had endured. For the first time in years, I remember smiling. "No, Sarah," I said in a cold voice. "I'm filing for divorce." I'll never forget the look of horror that crossed her face, but that wasn't the final blow. And James won't be your safe haven anymore either, because I told his wife, Jenny, everything. She saw all the evidence I showed her. That broke Sarah completely. After leaving the house, I barely spoke to her for several days. Throughout the process, I worked with my lawyer to expedite the end of our marriage. Sarah fluctuated between begging and fits of rage, but I no longer cared. I just wanted to be free. When the divorce papers were ready, I felt an immense weight lift off my shoulders. Sarah, on the other hand, was falling apart rapidly. One day she would imagine everything could be fixed, and the next she would lash out at me in anger. But none of it mattered to me anymore. I had the divorce papers delivered to her at work. It was a cold decision, perhaps, but I had no energy left for another dramatic scene. I heard she stormed out of the office, screaming. Meanwhile, I was turning over a new leaf. Of course, it wasn't easy. 10 years of marriage can't be forgotten overnight. But Sarah's betrayal had shown me exactly who she was. Once that bond of trust was broken, there was no going back. When I dropped off her belongings at the small apartment she had rented, I reflected on how our lives had come to this point. In front of me stood a broken, desperate woman. I handed over her things in silence and left. The next day, I met with James's wife, Jenny. After exposing the affair, we had stayed in contact, and she was gathering information for her own divorce case. As two people who had suffered the same betrayal, we sat and talked for hours. We discussed life, infidelity, and what awaited us in the future. There was a strange connection between us, two people whose trust had been shattered, offering each other a kind of solace. The more time I spent with Jenny, the more I began to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. I wasn't going to let Sarah's actions break me. Yes, a significant part of my life had ended, but this was not the end. It was a new beginning. And while I didn't know where my connection with Jenny would lead, it felt like the icing on the cake. The divorce was finalized without much of a struggle. Once Sarah realized her manipulations wouldn't work, she gave up. There were no children, no significant assets to divide. I kept the house, the car, and almost everything. Sarah left with nothing but the shattered remnants of her ego and a suitcase full of regret. And James? Things didn't turn out well for him either. After my meeting with Jenny, I told her everything, and she prepared her own divorce papers. James walked away from this affair with nothing. When I first saw him at the courthouse, I'll never forget the look on his face. He hadn't even realized that his little fling had completely wrecked his life. As for Sarah and James's relationship, it quickly fell apart too. Sarah tried to rebuild something with James, but he had already lost interest. Two people who had ruined their lives for a fleeting affair, left with nothing in the end. And me? I made a fresh start. Something began to blossom between Jenny and me. I don't know where it will lead, but for the first time in a long while, I feel like I'm on the right path. I'm opening a new chapter in my life with the peace that comes from leaving toxic people behind.